faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally talking books. As everyone knows, ancient Rome was an empire spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa, and it's a key representative of early Western civilization. It paralleled China's Han Dynasty of the same era. Just like when we talk about the Han Dynasty, we mention Emperor Wu of Han. When it comes to Rome, Caesar is absolutely a must-discuss topic. Caesar was such a crucial politician in Roman history that the name Caesar became a title for later European monarchs. For instance, the German Kaiser and the Russian Tsar correspond to the word Caesar in their languages. Why is Caesar so important? This is inseparable from his accomplishments. He was a statesman, military commander, and literary figure. He spent his life in warfare, conquered all of Gaul, defeated his political rivals in civil war, became a dictator, fully controlled Rome's military and political power, and was key to Rome's transition from republic to empire. The book I'm introducing today, The Life of Caesar the Giant, is a solid Caesar biography. Its author, Goldsworthy, is a doctor of ancient history from Oxford University and an expert in ancient Roman history. In this book, Goldsworthy traces Caesar's journey from birth to the peak of political power. Caesar's political career can be divided into 4 periods: the formative period, the Gallic period, the Civil War period, and the dictatorship period. In this episode, I'll use these 4 periods as a guide to tell you how Caesar, step by step, rose to the pinnacle of power. Next, I'll discuss the first period, how Caesar's political career started. Caesar was born on July 12th, 100 BC, and his full name was Gaius Julius Caesar. This is a typical Roman aristocratic name. Gaius is his given name, Caesar is his family name, and Julius represents his clan. The Julii were an ancient noble family, prominent in the early Republic, but faded by Caesar's birth, so his nobility didn't help much in his political career. He later dominated Roman politics through his own abilities. So how did Caesar enter the Roman political arena? To answer that, we first need to understand the administrative structure of the Roman Republic. So, the Roman Republic's administrative officials were divided into 2 types. One was regular magistrates, like modern civil servants, from low to high, quaestors, aediles, praetors, and consuls. The highest-ranking consul was equivalent to a head of state, wielding both military and political power. Besides regular magistrates, Rome had many special offices like priests, cavalry commanders, and generals. These offices operated outside the civil service promotion system, with most positions filled through elections. Oh, especially worth noting. Yeah, Romans disliked individuals holding excessive power long term, so officials typically served just 1-year terms, with each rank having at least 2 holders. Even the top consuls followed this rule. Additionally, former magistrates entered the Senate, an advisory body similar to the U.S. Senate. Senators supervised the magistrates. Magistrates' proposals required Senate debate and approval before taking effect. This political structure and power distribution once made the Republic dynamic, enabling it to defeat countless rivals. By then, Roman territory stretched from Greece in the east to southern Spain in the west, with holdings in North Africa. Controlling southern France to the north, it truly dominated the Mediterranean. However, by Caesar's late Republican era, this system developed serious flaws, with 2 issues most impacting his career start. First, Rome's expanding territory led to establishing provinces in conquered regions. By the late Republic, tensions between Rome and its provinces grew acute. Second, electoral campaigns intensified with soaring costs. Now, I'll unpack how these factors shaped Caesar's rise step by step. First, the Rome province conflicts. After their terms, praetors and consuls became provincial governors, but in the late Republic, most abused power and exploited locals, creating opportunities for Caesar. Since Roman offices were elected, candidates needed strong reputations to win votes. Caesar built his early reputation by helping provincials expose and prosecute corrupt governors. This defiance of power earned him broad support. His political ascent was remarkably smooth. From quaestor to aedile, then praetor, and finally consul, each victory decisive against rivals. Having covered the conflicts between Rome and its provinces, next, let's talk about the high election costs in the late Republic. Candidates at the time had to hold lots of events to woo voters and privately fund city infrastructure to boost their image. Such huge expenses were way beyond what ordinary folks could handle. So candidates ended up with massive debts. Caesar was no exception. In Roman currency, he owed 31 million before even running for office. What does this number mean? Rome called its wealthy class the equestrian order, and the asset requirement was only 400,000. Compared to that, 31 million was astronomical. So how did they repay such huge debts? For Caesar, he paid it off with wealth from military campaigns, but others without his talent just exploited provincials as governors. A stark contrast. Naturally, Caesar came out on top. From Caesar's early career, it's clear this political pattern was a vicious cycle in the late Republic. New politicians gained fame by prosecuting corrupt governors, then took on debt to run for office. Finally, to repay debts, they exploited provincials, just one symptom of the Republic's late-stage issues. Caesar rose in such an era. To gain higher status, he had to play by Rome's corrupt rules. At the same time, this helped him see the Republic's deep flaws. In 58 BC, Caesar ended his consulship and became governor of Gaul, marking his second career phase. During the Gallic period, Caesar campaigned in Gaul for 8 years. These 8 years were crucial for both the Republic and Caesar personally. First, what was Gaul? It included parts of modern France, Belgium, and Netherlands, inhabited by Celtic tribes unable to match Roman power. But when Caesar became governor, only a small part in southern France was under Roman control. So, after Caesar arrived, his greatest contribution to Rome was conquering Gaul over 8 years, fully incorporating it into Roman territory and expanding the northern border to the Rhine. So what did these 8 years mean for Caesar personally? So that brings me to my second point. What political capital did Caesar gain from these 8 years in Gaul? Now, these campaigns held at least two crucial meanings for Caesar. On one hand, Caesar forged an exceptionally loyal and formidable army during these years. On the other, the accumulated military glory dramatically elevated his political standing. First, about Caesar's army. He fought over 20 major battles during the Gallic campaigns. I'll briefly cover three: Bibracte, Sabis River, and Alesia. These battles showcase this army's evolution under Caesar. First was Bibracte in 58 BC, Caesar's opening campaign. But this debut wasn't flawless. He planned a night raid on an enemy camp. He aimed to use its high ground for a surprise attack on their headquarters. Initially successful, his lieutenant quickly captured the high ground. But then a cowardly officer gave false reports, making Caesar think the raid failed, costing him the advantage. Forced into open battle on flat terrain afterward, he personally rallied each cohort, restoring morale to win. After this, Caesar intensified training. Within a year, the army transformed. At Sabis River, when ambushed during camp construction, his troops swiftly counterattacked. Soldiers reportedly formed ad hoc units instantly upon spotting enemies, creating battle lines with astonishing speed. Post-victory, Caesar credited their determination and discipline. From then on, this army grew fiercer with every battle. In 57 BC, Caesar led this army to invade what is now Belgium. In 55 and 54 BC, he twice crossed the English Channel to invade Britain. After years of such trials, the army was completely transformed, and Caesar's decisive battle in Gaul finally commenced. This was the Battle of Alesia in 52 BC. A Gallic chieftain named Vercingetorix formed a pan-Gallic alliance to resist Caesar. Caesar surrounded Vercingetorix's main force at Aelia fortress. During the stalemate, nearly all Gallic tribes reinforced Vercingetorix, forcing Caesar's 80,000 men to face nearly 200,000 Gauls. This time, facing a flood of enemies, no Roman showed fear. With battle lines stretched thin, officers made decisions without consulting Caesar. When positions faltered, officers regrouped troops and formed new lines to rejoin combat. Thus, the Romans repelled two massive assaults and achieved final victory. Gaul was fully conquered. After these three battles, this army transformed. Its combat effectiveness was unmatched throughout Rome. With this army and his Gallic achievements, Caesar's political standing became extraordinary. This was another crucial impact of the Gallic campaigns. So, where did Caesar stand in Roman politics then? After conquering Gaul, Caesar formed the first triumvirate with Rome's two most influential figures, Pompey and Crassus, dominating Roman politics. Pompey was a renowned Republic general who campaigned extensively in his early years. In Africa, he conquered Numidia, North Africa's cavalry powerhouse. In Western Europe, he quelled rebellions in Spain. In the East, he conquered Greece and extended Rome's frontier to Syria. Such feats were unparalleled, while Crassus was Rome's wealthiest man with broad equestrian support. We previously said that Roman politicians all borrowed money for elections, and Crassus was their biggest creditor. It's said that all politicians owed money to Crassus at the time. Even Caesar was no exception. Caesar's alliance with these two dates back to 59 BC when he was consul. As consul, he had the power to propose laws. At the time, Pompey needed land to settle veterans, and Crassus wanted to help his equestrian friends gain more benefits. Thus, as consul, Caesar helped them push their bills in exchange for their support. So, in the early alliance period, control was entirely in Pompey and Crassus's hands. Caesar couldn't compete with them. But this changed in 56 BC. This was Caesar's third year campaigning in Gaul. He had swept through most of Gaul, advancing his army as far as Belgium. With such achievements, Caesar's prestige matched Pompey and Crassus's, and that year, the three held a meeting in Lucca, central Italy, the famous Lucca Conference. At the meeting, Caesar sat as an equal with Pompey and Crassus, even becoming the leader of the triumvirate's political strategy. Caesar suggested that Pompey and Crassus run for consul together the next year, and after their term, each could govern a key border province. Remember, border provinces handled defense, so governors held military power. Thus, Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus would all command armies, making the triumvirate unshakable. The following events unfolded exactly as Caesar envisioned. In the following years, Rome's consuls were elected from the triumvirate's allies. If any one of the three opposed a bill, it wouldn't pass. You could say that within Rome's political framework, Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus had reached the pinnacle. In 49 BC, Caesar's governorship of Gaul was ending, and his political career changed dramatically that year. Regarding Caesar before 49 BC, overall, he was still conforming to the Roman Republic. He merely pushed existing political rules to their limits. But Caesar after 49 BC was completely different. This year marked the third phase of Caesar's career, the Civil War period. It was now that Caesar resolved to break Rome's political rules. Having conquered Gaul, he deserved a hero's welcome back in Rome. But the Senate viewed him unfavorably. As we know, Romans disliked individuals holding excessive power long term. And Caesar now surpassed most colleagues in achievements and manipulated Roman politics. While not illegal, he violated Roman sensibilities. Returning to Rome meant certain prosecution by the Senate. Caesar's plan, run for consul during his final year as governor, magistrates had legal immunity shielding him from Senate charges. Did this plan succeed? Naturally, no. The Senate demanded he resign as governor and return to Rome before campaigning. Moreover, two Senate actions pushed Caesar to the brink. First, they recruited Pompey after Crassus died, fighting Parthia in 53 BC, shattering the triumvirate's balance. Pompey's seniority meant he'd never let Caesar surpass him. The Senate exploited this, turning Pompey against Caesar. With Pompey's support, the Senate feared no military clash with Caesar. Thus, they issued the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, declaring Rome in a state of emergency. This decree was a proclamation when Rome faced grave danger. By issuing it now, the Senate branded Caesar Rome's enemy. Facing these moves, Caesar had no retreat. Finally, in January 49 BC, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River in northern Italy, igniting civil war. Roman law forbade provincial soldiers from entering Italy. By crossing the Rubicon, Caesar showed he'd completely disregarded Republican law, determined to militarily purge the Senate opposing him. A civil war. After it began, with Rome lacking troops, Pompey and senators retreated to Greece to regroup. Caesar swiftly seized all Italy, then marched to Spain, eliminating Pompey's forces there to secure his rear. In 48 BC, Caesar headed to Greece for the final showdown with Pompey. Caesar and Pompey were arguably Rome's two greatest generals at the time. Their military talents might have been equal, but many factors beyond leadership decided the war. Caesar had just over 20,000 troops, while Pompey commanded 45,000. In troop numbers, Caesar was clearly at a disadvantage. But Caesar's army was his battle-hardened Gallic legions. Combat effectiveness that was unmatched in Roman, while Pompey's forces were mostly new recruits with little experience. Plus, senators who knew nothing about war stood behind Pompey, constantly urging quick action. This forced Pompey into premature battle with Caesar. Thus began the Battle of Pharsalus, which shaped Rome's destiny. Pompey bet everything on his cavalry. His plan: use 6,000 plus cavalry to crush Caesar's 1,000 horsemen, then flank Caesar's infantry from behind. But Caesar saw through this deployment immediately. Caesar set a countertrap, stationing 1,500 infantry behind his cavalry. When Pompey's cavalry charged, these soldiers suddenly rushed forward with javelins. Pompey's cavalry fell into chaos. Without saddles or stirrups then, riders struggled to control horses. Cavalry were only effective in formation, not individually. Once disordered, Pompey's cavalry was swiftly routed. With his brilliant plan failed and infantry ineffective, Pompey stood no chance. Caesar won decisively. Pompey fled to Egypt. While most senators surrendered, only a few hardliners escaped. After the Battle of Pharsalus, Caesar pursued Pompey to Egypt, where the Egyptians, to curry favor with Caesar, killed Pompey. After that, in 47 BC, Caesar took advantage of Egypt's political struggles to help Cleopatra VII, the famous Cleopatra, ascend to the throne. The following year, he defeated the last remnants of Pompey's forces in North Africa. Thus, the civil war ended and all of Rome was conquered by Caesar. The civil war had at least three important impacts for Caesar. First, legally, when Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, the laws of the Republic completely ceased to apply to him. His political decisions thereafter were no longer bound by any existing political rules. Politically, with Caesar's victory at the Battle of Pharsalus, the authority of the Senate was completely gone, and his political position was unshakable at this point. Faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally Talking Books. As everyone knows, ancient Rome was an empire spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa, and it's a key representative of early Western civilization. Finally, in terms of military achievements, Caesar had already conquered Gaul, and now his armies swept through Eastern Europe and North Africa, accomplishments that left everyone else in awe. Under these circumstances, no one in all of Rome dared to challenge Caesar's authority anymore. In 46 BC, Caesar returned to Rome and held 4 triumphal parades consecutively. The triumphal parade was the highest honor Rome bestowed upon victorious generals. The triumphant general would parade through Rome with his army, showcasing his military feats. Notably, in Caesar's triumphal parade, he had 72 lictors leading the way, whereas a consul could only have 12, which speaks volumes. And Caesar was immensely glorious at that time. And in the same year, he was appointed dictator, a special position. He held sole military and political power in Rome. The Senate proposed a special motion and followed a special procedure to appoint Caesar as dictator, marking the start of the final phase of his career, the dictatorship period. When speaking of dictatorship, we often associate it with tyrants. However, Caesar was not cruel. His early political experiences made him aware of Rome's many flaws. Therefore, his rule was actually a very enlightened form of dictatorship. I first, he pardoned senators who previously opposed him and appointed those who remained neutral during the Civil War to official positions. He then implemented land laws, providing farms for soon to retire veterans so they could live comfortably after service. Additionally, he expanded rights for provincial citizens, even incorporating Gaul into the Senate. Of course, he also reformed provincial administration, enacting anti-luxury laws to prevent official corruption. Clearly, these measures must have been quite popular at the time. But we all know Caesar's rule didn't last long. He was assassinated just 2 years later. So why did such an enlightened ruler meet a violent end? In short, Caesar was killed because he destroyed Rome's republican system. The Roman Republic opposed long-term individual power, required elected magistrates to lead, and needed Senate approval for laws. These traditions were core to the Republic, yet Caesar disregarded them entirely. First, Caesar strengthened his dictatorship. Though not Rome's first dictator, he likely became the first with lifelong dictatorial powers. 36 years before Caesar, Rome had another famous dictator, Sulla. Like Caesar, Sulla seized power through force, but ultimately stepped down voluntarily, unlike Caesar, who intended to rule indefinitely. Moreover, Caesar monopolized official appointments, personally deciding nearly all magistrate positions. Though magistrates were elected, Caesar's endorsed candidates always won, often without opponents. For example, when Consul Fabius died on his last morning in office in 45 BC, Caesar hastily organized a vote that same day for a replacement. This consul took office at noon on the year's final day, so his term lasted just one afternoon. Thus, people joked this consul was exceptionally diligent. He never even slept during his term. Clearly, under Caesar's rule, even officials at the consul level became near figureheads. Finally, Caesar bypassed the Senate entirely. Most of his decrees were issued without Senate discussion. However, to feign legality, he'd forged senators' signatures on documents. Some senators even received baffling letters from provinces thanking them for supporting bills they'd never seen. Under these circumstances, some senators finally snapped. Led by Brutus, 60 conspired to eliminate Caesar permanently. On March 15th, 44 BC, Caesar came to the Senate for a meeting. The conspirators chose this day to strike. When Caesar arrived, conspirators crowded around him, making requests, kissing his hand, until one suddenly drew a dagger and stabbed him, followed by the rest. Caesar fought them desperately, trying to cut his way out, but was overwhelmed and died under the senators' swords. So, thus, this giant met his end. This concludes our account of Caesar's life. So after Caesar's death, where would the Roman Republic head next? After Caesar's death, Brutus, the assassination's mastermind, believed he defended Rome's republic. He went to the Forum to announce this to all Romans. But unexpectedly, the Roman people reacted with utter indifference. Soon after, riots broke out in Rome. Conspirator senators were attacked. Outside Rome, provinces spontaneously held memorials for Caesar, proving his popularity and the fundamental soundness of his rule. After 460 years, the Roman Republic truly needed a strong dictator to heal its systemic flaws. After Caesar's death, his adopted son Octavian inherited his legacy, transforming the Republic into the Roman Empire as its first emperor. Thus, Caesar became the uncrowned king before the empire's birth. Well, that's the life of Caesar the Giant. That concludes our book interpretation. Keynotes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.